Hey guys, it's Kristen and welcome back to the Gold Project. I am so excited to share this video with you guys. Now, I am sharing today, if you haven't checked out the title, which I'm sure you have, my pantry reorganization. Now, this is what's funny about it. For the past 2 years, I have put pantry organization on my yearly goals. I finished my pantry this year. I went and I was like, yes, I finally get to mark an item off of my goals for the year. It wasn't on there. I'm like, what was I thinking? I guess I had little confidence in myself that I was going to accomplish this goal this year, but I did. So I'm super excited to share this with you. Now, you might be wondering why I am not standing in the kitchen. Now, I decided to film this video in my daughter's room where I film most all of my videos now because of the lighting, instead of the kitchen, because the kitchen echoes so bad and I don't like the echo. So I thought, okay, I'm going to film the video in my daughter's room and then I'll add clips throughout. So let's hope that this works out. So what started this entire project? I will tell you that the week I got out for summer break, I had just had enough. I'm going to pop up pictures throughout. I walked in my pantry one day and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, it is just absolutely, it was like I could not breathe when I walked into the pantry and really absorbed the space. There were spices on every different rack. I had paint buckets in the floor. All of the painting supplies that we used back in December were still in there. From the paint buckets to the paint brushes to the trays to the towels that we used, everything was in the pantry. And I'm thinking, pantries are not made for paint things. Why are they still in here? It got to where it was very hard to find anything. Things would get somehow shoved to the very back of a pantry shelf. And it was just a chaotic mess. I'm like, I consider myself a pretty organized person, but Lord, I would not want anybody to walk into this pantry right now. It's insane and it's an embarrassment. It truly was. So I said, enough is enough. So I walked in there after coming to that realization. I walked in there with my Erin Condren notebook and a pen and just evaluated my space. And the first thing that I did was I wrote down every single category of food in my pantry. So I went through and I was like, okay, I've got spices, and then I have baking items, chips. Then my husband has his breakfast items. I have my breakfast items. My kids have their breakfast items. I've got pots and pans. I've got knives. I've got medications. So I wrote down every category that I wanted in that pantry. The next thing that I did was I drew up a plan. And y'all, this is probably the planning part of this, I'm going to say, is what I think is going to make it a success. Probably my most viewed video on this channel is my pantry organization from the very beginning in 2015. I thought that was going to work, but you guys, I did no planning. All I did was pulled everything out of my pantry and I reorganized it in sections. So when I went back in there, I had no idea where things went. They were just kind of sectioned off. Not really in containers, not really labeled at all. So what I did this time was I actually came up with a plan. I had a plan. I drew out every single shelf and I started to label what areas I wanted on each shelf. Okay, the chips are going to go here. The baking items are going to go here. I want all of popcorn's going to go here. My medication is going to go here. So I had 4 pages because I have 4 shelves. I had drawn them out and I labeled each shelf where I wanted each item to go. After I did that, I had a page at the beginning that said pantry organization to purchase. So when I went through every one of the shelves and every category that I had written down, and I put what type of bin or container that I wanted for each one of those. Then I would go through and say, okay, I have one of those here. I don't need to purchase it. So I knew exactly when I went to the store what items I needed to purchase. I don't know if y'all are anything like me. When I am looking for containers and I don't have a plan and I walk into the store, I get overwhelmed because I want to buy every container that they have because new storage just makes me happy when I probably had the same thing at home. So I'm trying not to purchase unnecessary things. So that is what I would say has made this project a success. I made the categories, I sectioned everything out, I wrote down what my space looked like, where I wanted everything, and then I made a to purchase list. So the next thing, it helped me focus. Making all of those things helped me focus, and it made the process a lot easier. So if you are doing a pantry organization and you don't know where to start with a pencil and some paper or pen and paper. It truly helped me in this case. Now, the next thing that I did was I emptied out my entire pantry. I used my entire kitchen. And when I emptied out the pantry, I tried to put everything in categories. So all of the baking things went together. All of my flours and rice and all of that went in a section. All of my pots and pans went into a section. So everything was cleaned out of my pantry. Then I cleaned everything, all the shelves off. I swept and vacuumed the floor, and then I went in and reevaluated my space. I made sure that the plan that I came up with was one that was going to work for the space. Then I would finalize my containers. So I evaluated my space again once it was empty, and I finalized the containers. So this is where I started looking to see what I had. I would make sure everything that I wanted fit in that container. Then labeling. Labeling, I want to say the plan is one part that's going to make this pantry a success. The labeling was the second. So everything that you were going to see in my pantry is in some sort of container. So the labeling, what I did was I had some Container Store clear plastic labels, and I had some clear plastic labels from Target. Now the Target ones, I don't think they have them in the dollar spot right now, but I bought those during the back to school, when they had all of the back to school things in the dollar section. So check there at Target when all of those things come out. So they're like little clear pockets that you can slip paper in. So what I did was I measured each one of them with some blue scrapbook paper, and I made sure that I had enough of that scrapbook paper to fill every label that needed to go in the pantry. I wanted everything to look uniform. So I cut and measured. Then I used the back side of some scrapbook paper that I had that I wasn't using, cut it down, and I used my Elmer's tape runner to attach that white piece to the colored piece. Then I got out my Container Store label maker and I typed in the labels. Then I stuck that to the white piece of paper and slid it into the pocket. That was it, you guys. And I did that for every single bin that went into this pantry. That is what I think is going to make it successful. And what I did after I did that, after I did the label, I attached it to the container. I went on my little sheet where I had it marked, and I put a little check mark. So you see all the check marks that I have, those are, hey, that label is created and it is on the container. So then after I did the labels, then that is where I started putting things back into the pantry. So I would make sure I had my container, put the label on the front, filled that container, and then it went back into my pantry where it was labeled on my plan. I'm telling you, that is what has made this successful. So nothing went into the pantry until it was in a container and the container was labeled. So if I did not have a container at that moment, those items sat in my kitchen, like on the back wall, until I got a container that I could use for those items. It was a slow process, but I took my time. I feel like because I took my time that it's going to be successful this time. Now you've seen the before of my pantry. I've given you a look at some of the things that I did with the labeling and the planning and how I pulled everything out. Now let's take a look at the finalized pantry. Okay, so you will see that the containers in this pantry are all white. For my pantry, I wanted everything to be the same color. I think having containers that are all the same color makes it look uniform. So when you walk in there, immediately you see a pantry full of white containers with the blue labels. The blue labels, I feel like, make that stand out. So you know exactly when you look at the white container, your eye is drawn to the blue label. So that's what I wanted. Every single container has got the clear pocket with the label inside. Now we're going to talk about some bits and pieces in this pantry and why I set it up this way. Now starting with the top, I put the medication on the very top of my pantry because I wanted to make sure that my kids could not get to that area. It is out of reach for them. My husband and I are the only ones that should be able to reach the very top shelf. I divided them up into 2 containers. The first container is for everyday type of medications like ibuprofen and things like that that we might need that's not considered us being sick. Then I have the other one that says sick on the front or sickness on the front, and that's for like allergy medication. Any type of nasal spray, if my kids need some kind of fever reducer, all of that is in the sickness bin. Okay, then working our way around, the second thing that you see is an overflow basket. And I got that idea from Catherine from Do It on a Dime. She said she had an overflow basket. So what is in this overflow basket is anything that would not fit in one of the other containers. Like Cheerios, it would not fit in the cereal container. I think I've got gummy bears in there that would not fit in the snack container. So this is basically my overflow bucket. Then going to the right, I have my recipe books on the top, because y'all, I don't access those and use them every single day. So if they're in a bucket at the top, that's fine, and then my kids can't get to them. Then I have my drink dispenser and my pitchers. And then on the far right are my knives. I wanted to make sure my knives were at the very top corner so my kids could not touch those either. That was something, y'all. I had knives in my drawer for a while, and my son one day came in there and was like, "Mom, I've got a knife." I'm like, nope, we're moving those. Now we're going to go to the second shelf. The second shelf from the top, we're going left to right, is 2 baking baskets. So the baking baskets are anything from, sprinkles and icings to things like spaghetti sauce, because, y'all, we don't buy in bulk. My husband and I will buy exactly what we need, and that is it. So it's not like we're going to have 15 containers of spaghetti sauce. Now moving around, we have a drink container, and this has things like extra coffees, hot chocolate, anything in the drink department. And then we have what I am considering quick meals. Anything from macaroni and cheese to peanut butter, to tuna fish packets that my husband eats. Anything that you can just open it up, grab it out, and make a quick meal. I think we have the ramen noodles in there. Then moving on to the right, we have snacks. So I have a snack container or bucket, and it has things like gummy bears and popcorn and things basically for my kids. Then we have a chips bucket. Chips, pretzels, anything like that goes in there. And then last but not least, we have the container of popcorn. Now, some people may be concerned that, hey, you can't see in these buckets. I'm okay that you can't see in these buckets because I have a 4 and an 8-year-old, and I would prefer them not to be able to see what's in the containers, because if we're trying to eat lunch, they walk in there and the snack container is easy to see in, they're going to want to eat gummy bears instead of some healthy lunch. Now, moving on the third shelf, third from the top shelf, first thing that you see that you don't see are my spices. I will talk about my spices probably at the end of this rack. Now, the first thing that you see are basically, on the left, I have a little turntable. And on the turntable, I have all of my spices that will not fit in a drawer. I've moved my spices to a drawer system that I will show you in just a minute. So salt and anything like that that would not fit in that drawer is on this turntable. Then you see all of my OXO containers filled with rice and flour and powdered sugar, brown sugar, noodles, and all of those things. Now you might be wondering, how do I know, since I don't have the actual container, what the expiration date is on the containers? I turned the container around on the back and used a dry erase marker to mark the date. So it's really easy to, take a Kleenex or a paper towel, wipe it off, and then remark the date once I put a new container of products in there. Then on the far right, I have another turntable, and you see that I've used the turntables in the spaces that were going to be extra, that were hard to get to. So I've filled up all of the space in this pantry. Now on this turntable are basically vinegars and oil. So I've got my olive oil, some vinegar, apple cider vinegar, I think I have some essential oils. All of those things fit on that turntable. Then on the right, I call this whole section my breakfast section. I have a bucket for my husband, a bucket for me, and a breakfast bucket for my kids. And the reason why, my husband eats something different than I do. So I wanted to make sure that he didn't have to, go through the bulk breakfast bucket and find his things. So he's got a bucket for his things. I have a bucket for mine, and y'all know mine is filled with those kind breakfast bars because that's what I eat every morning with my coffee. And my kids have their bucket. And then on the very end of this shelf, I have a container of cereal. Now, my household, I've realized we only buy one type of cereal, and that's Cheerios. That is why you only see one container for cereal. Now, if we decide to add more cereal to our household, if my kids decide they like a second cereal, I get another container like this one, label it cereal on the outside, and it will sit beside this one. Now, before I get to the very bottom shelf, let me talk about my spices. So what I did for my spices is I went through after I pulled them all out, and I made a list of every spice that I had in my pantry. And what I was going to originally do was get identical containers for everything. And then I decided to watch some YouTube videos on how some other people organize their spices. I absolutely love the way that Catherine from Doing on a Dime did her spices. So that's exactly what I did for mine. I emptied out one drawer that had all of the cup lids in it, cleaned it out, disinfected it. I went to Walmart. I purchased some foam board like she did. I think I used 2 pieces of foam board. And I basically measured and I cut based on basically her video. So if you want a how-to on how all of this was done, I will leave her video link in the description below. All it took was some foam board, an X-Acto knife, a measuring tape, and some hot glue. And all I did was made some risers for my drawer. And I will tell you, it was not an easy process. I had the thing set up. I was like, oh, it looks really great. I put it in my drawer and it would not fit. I think I had measured wrong on the very back end, or when I was cutting with my X-Acto knife, it was just not a perfect cut. So I had to pry it out of the drawer, recut, and place it back in the drawer. Same thing for the last set of risers. I had made it too high for the very back. So I recommend using her measurements. Make sure that you use a rise of about 1 inch so it does not go above your drawer width, so your drawer will shut. But I loved how it turned out. For under $2, it looks amazing. Now the bottom shelf, we're going to start left to right. I wanted to make this area my containers. So I have a basket with containers, and then I have a basket with lids. Now these containers I have been through several different times. We use every one of these containers and lids for leftovers and for things that we take to and from work and school for lunch. I wanted them separate because it just makes it easier if you know all the containers are in here and all of the lids are in this second one. Now moving around to the very middle section, you see in the little crease there, or the little crooked, hard to reach to area, is a basket of kitchen gadgets. These are kitchen gadgets that I don't reach for all the time, like a cheese grater, things that go with my KitchenAid mixer, but I wanted them in a basket that were labeled. So they are labeled. I know where to find them. I know everything that is in the basket, and they are kind of out of the way. And then to the right, this is basically all of my pots and pans. So you're going to see the first thing is a container with all my pots and pan lids. I know what's all in there. I don't have to rummage through anything to find them. And then you're going to see all of my pots, my pans, and then on the very end is my waffle iron. So all of these things I wanted to be able to get to them. And that's the thing why I decided to put these in the pantry instead of the cabinet. When I had my pots and pans in the cabinet, I didn't know what I had. It was hard to get to. I would pull one pot out and everything would fall out of the cabinet. It was very frustrating. So I decided to move and keep all of those in my pantry. And then to the floor. The floor is organized for once in this house. 2.5 years we've lived here, and the floor is actually being utilized in this pantry. So I'm very happy to share this. Now the first thing that you see is a can organizer. And this is the biggest purchase that I made for this pantry. I'll go over how much I spent at the very end. But this can organizer I got from Amazon after I watched the pantry video from Catherine from Do It on a Dime. If you see, I used a lot of ideas from hers and kind of made them my own, made them to work for my space instead of hers. She said that she highly recommended, if you didn't buy anything but one product for your pantry, to purchase a can organizer. So I purchased this one from Amazon for $22, and y'all, it is pretty big. It was easy to put together, and it works in that floor space perfectly. Now, I would not use a can organizer if I had a ton of different cans of vegetables or soups, because it's hard to see what's at the back of each one of the shelves. But we don't buy a lot of canned foods, and we usually buy the same cans every time. We might buy cans of soup for our kids, and my husband eats a lot of the canned potatoes and canned corns and canned vegetables. So it's not something that we are going to have 10 or 15 different types of cans. So that is why this worked for our pantry. It won't work for every pantry. Now beside that, I finally have a spot to keep all of our lunch boxes, and I have some popcorn buckets in there as well. So I made it so it's easy for my kids to get to. So they can walk right in the pantry, go and grab their lunch box from the basket that's sitting in the floor. Now to the right, another fantastic thing that I'm excited about are my 2 pet containers. Now originally when I went, I knew I needed pet containers. I didn't want to spend a lot of money because I was trying to do this pantry on a budget. But I went with all intention of getting those galvanized buckets for both animals. I found that they had them at Walmart, and they were going to be $10 or $11 a piece. So I got there, all intentions of getting those. I had them in my basket. I wheel around by the paint section and notice they have big white paint buckets with handles for $5 a piece. I'm like, ooh. So I checked the label on the back, and there's a big label on the back that says food safe. Okay, I could save half the price that I was going to spend on these galvanized buckets on these buckets here. So I walked and put those others back and got these. So together, both of these buckets for my dog and cat cost under $10. So I think it was $3 for the bucket, and I think it was $1.50 for each lid. So excellent, very well made, high quality, and they are food friendly. So that is probably one of my favorite purchases for this entire pantry, are those pet containers. And then on the very right bottom, you see my IKEA little small organizer. And I don't really have that organized yet. I'm trying to put all my pet supplies in that. So I will probably do a separate pet video later on once I get all of that organized with my pet's items. And you guys, that is a look at my entire pantry completely reorganized. I am super excited with the way that it looks. I'm happy with everything and how it turned out. And you might be wondering how much I spent on this project. I purchased the can organizer that was $22 off of Amazon. And make sure, like I've said earlier, check the description for links to all the products that are available that I did purchase. If you click on a link and make a purchase, I don't make a profit. It is just for your benefit alone. And then I bought the 5 round bins from Dollar Tree, and they were each $1. So I spent $5 on those. I already had all the labels and the pockets, and I had a lot of the containers that I used in this pantry. The 2 pet buckets cost me $10. And then the foam board cost $2. So altogether, I spent a total of $38 reorganizing my pantry. When I first sat down and I made a plan and I made the list of items that I was going to purchase, I didn't end up needing all of the items that I purchased that I was going to purchase in the beginning because I had items that I could use. I moved things around in my house and used buckets that I already had. But y'all, at the beginning, I thought there's no way I can make this pantry work under $50. And I only spent $38. So I'm super proud of how it turned out. And I did it on a budget. Now, I think that this pantry is going to work over my other one because, one, I had a plan. I evaluated my space, and I got my pen and my paper out. I made categories, and I made a rough image of each shelf in my pantry, labeled, and I know exactly where everything was going. And the second reason I think this is going to be a success over my pantry organization in 2015 is because I labeled. Every single bin in this pantry is labeled. So when I walk in there with a can, I know exactly where the can needs to go. If I have a bag of chips, I know where the chips go because that bucket is labeled. When I did this in 2015, I did no labeling. So I think planning out your space, evaluating your space, and labeling is huge to making this project a success. And you guys, that is all for my pantry organization. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I have greatly enjoyed this entire process. At the very end, y'all, I smiled and was super proud of everything I accomplished and how everything looked at the end. I hope you give this video a thumbs up, and I hope you subscribe if you haven't done so already. I hope y'all have a fantastic week, and until next time, bye you guys.